Prime Minister Andrew Holness says there's no doubt that the imposition of tougher mandatory minimum sentences for murder will have a meaningful impact on reducing the incidence of violent crime. In his contribution to the debate in Parliament, Mr. Holness says that's why his administration is moving full speed ahead to pass the appropriate legislation to support that measure. Chevron Campbell has that story.
Prime Minister Holness says just as the new Firearms Act has had a positive impact on reducing the prevalence of guns, he's certain stricter penalties for murders will do the same. He says this will particularly affect change among young Jamaicans.
I am certain that after the passage of this bill and they get the understanding of what the consequence of their actions are, in the same way that we are already seeing increased recovery of firearms, but a reduction as well in shootings. In other words, the new Firearms Act, which has adjusted upward the penalty, we are already starting to see the impact of the legislation on the decisions of our young people in relation to firearm crime. And you're going to see that reverberate right throughout the society. The stiffer penalties, the stronger penalties, the adjusted penalty regimes will have a deterrent effect on crime and criminals in the country.
However, Mr. Holness says the ultimate cure for unattached youth is providing more opportunities. He says his administration can be credited with tackling that issue.
Their hands and minds and hearts need to be engaged. And that is why this government stands proudly to say that we have cut significantly in more than half youth unemployment in this country. Unattached youth in this country is at the lowest level it has ever been. And we announced recently programs that will pull in our unattached youngsters who have been idle in communities for a long time. Our youngsters have now more opportunity to be integrated into the mainstream of the society and find meaningful employment.
The Prime Minister also sought to rubbish a claim by South East St. Andrew MP Julian Robinson that he had no one to turn to in instances of a flare-up of violent crime. Mr. Holness says the MP is well aware that he can consult the Community Safety Branch of the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
We have invested heavily in increasing the capabilities of our police force in not just to respond in a unidimensional way. And we have seen this all the time. Every member inside here, at some point in time, if they have had a gang flare-up, would have been invited by the police commander, come let us have our community group meeting. Come let us have the community walks. I have participated many times, and I'm certain, exactly, member, so have all of you. Then how could you stand up and say that where do you go to? How could you stand up and say that?
Chevron Campbell for Nationwide News.
President of the Jamaica Association of Chairmen of Secondary Institutions, JACSI, Courtney Winter, says based on the regulations of the Education Act, only the board of a school can consent to the expulsion of any student. Dana Davey reports.
According to Courtney Winter, Section 30 of the regulations says school boards have full authority to expel a student from a public institution.
We have a green book, which most people refer to as the Bible. It's the Education Regulations of 1980. And the section that principally deals with the exclusion or, in fact, the suspension or disciplinary action for students is Section 30, which most boards familiarize themselves with. And per that set of regulations, the board is the only person in that chain that can exclude a student from any public institution or educational institution. That is, I think it's very clear in the procedures as it is set out in the reg.
He was speaking against the backdrop of at least 3 students being summarily dismissed from St. James High School since the start of the year by Principal Joseph Williams. The most recent incident brought to public attention involved 2 girls who were expelled from the institution in January after a video of them briefly kissing was posted on WhatsApp. One of the girls, a 16-year-old, posted the 2-second video on her WhatsApp status. The mother of the 16-year-old girl says it took 3 months before her daughter was placed in another school. It's understood that another St. James High student was also expelled in March without being subject to a disciplinary hearing. Mr. Winter explained that the regulations outline that the principal must make a report to the board on any infraction by a student that may require suspension.
A principal has the authority to suspend a student up to 10 days, and those are school days. Right? During that period, a report is made to the board. The board then makes a decision whether or not that infraction should be investigated, and they will pass it on to what's called a personnel committee. The personnel committee then investigates that infraction within those 10 suspension days. After the investigation of the matter, the personnel committee then makes a recommendation to the board.
He says the decision is then up to the board on what punishment is meted out to the student.
I think they have 3 or 4 choices. One is to reinstate the student with or without reprimand, and in fact they can also reprimand the parent or the guardian. The second choice is to further suspend the student for no more than 5 school days, and the third option of the board is to instruct the principal to exclude permanently the student from attending the institution. In a nutshell, that is the process as it is set out in the reg.
Dana Davey for Nationwide News.
There are many other Jadarites out there. Those were the words of Prime Minister Andrew Holness at Wednesday's opening of the Future Ready Conference at the University of Technology in St. Andrew. The Prime Minister was referencing 14-year-old Jada Wright, the youngest student in UTEC's history. Mahiri Stewart has that story.
STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. The 3-day conference, held under the theme Global Competency for a Global Economy, will provide opportunities for teachers and students to hear from top experts in the field of STEM education. At 14 years old, Jada Wright is the youngest student in the history of the University of Technology, following her enrollment at the institution to study computer science. Speaking Wednesday at the opening ceremony of the Future Ready Conference at the University of Technology in Kingston, Wright thanked the Prime Minister for investing into STEM training in Jamaica.
Special thank you to the Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holness for taking the step in the right direction, as well as for Marlon for organizing this conference to be able to empower our young generation, this generation, with the tools, the resources to be able to make change. We need to empower everyone in the country, all of our young people, to know that we have the ability to change the world. And all we need are the resources and the empowerment and the motivation to make that meaningful change.
In his keynote speech, the Prime Minister says more students like Jada Wright can be discovered in Jamaica through creating more opportunities for students to be trained in STEM.
If we can harness the creativity of Jamaicans like Jada Wright, who stood at this platform and spoke so eloquently for a 14-year-old admitted to university in the field of technology. And let me tell you that there are many other Jada Wrights out there. We just haven't found them. The system hasn't recognized them. Their parents may not even know. The teachers don't see them in the classroom to identify them. There are no programs sufficient to recognize the talent, take the talent, develop the talent, promote the talent.
The Prime Minister listed several implementations by the government dedicated to increasing opportunities for students in STEM across Jamaica.
The government has been working on ensuring that Jamaica becomes a digital society, starting with, of course, the construction of 6 STEM schools. We're ensuring that our teachers have access to the instruments of technology, and that is why we're giving out 10,000 laptops. We have 4 centers of excellence for STEM opened with the Heart Trust NSTA across Jamaica. The government last year launched the STEM Tertiary Scholarship Program, where we provided 1,250 Jamaican students with scholarships over the next 5 years to pursue a STEM teaching career at Michael University.
Mahiri Stewart for Nationwide News.
Meanwhile, newly elected president of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association, JMEA, Sidney Thwaites, wants the private sector to create more jobs in STEM fields.
We need to address our efficiency. We need to address our preparedness. We need to address our overall competitiveness. These answers are going to come with a collaboration. It is not the private sector looking to the government or looking to academia to solve our problems. We need to join hands, and there's not a silver bullet. There's not one of the parties represented here today who is going to solve their problem on their own. It is up to the private sector to create opportunities so that those who step into the breach as innovators have somewhere to go other than overseas.
Mr. Thwaites encouraged the students in attendance at the conference to take full advantage of the investments being made in STEM education across the island.
I said, you cannot tell a Jamaican that there's something we cannot do. Regardless of where we come from, our circumstances, and what we aspire to, you cannot tell us we cannot do something. Maybe there are some people you can tell that to. We are not the ones. So I say to all the students here, every one of you is a star, and use this opportunity and STEM and the focus to become the star you are. We're all going to be stars in different ways.
Sidney Thwaites, president of the JMEA, he was speaking on Wednesday at the opening ceremony of the Future Ready Conference at UTEC. The United Kingdom has committed £15 million sterling or 2.9 billion Jamaican dollars to the government's efforts to reduce the incidence of violent crimes over the next 6 years. The collaboration, dubbed UK-Jamaica Violence Prevention Partnership VPP, was formalized on Wednesday with the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding. VPP will promote an integrated, evidence-based and multi-sectoral response to address the root causes of violence in a number of schools and targeted communities. Speaking at the signing ceremony, State Minister in the National Security Ministry, Juliet Cuthbert-Flynn, says the program is a significant step forward.
This program represents a holistic approach to tackling the root cause of violence in our country. Also stated, this is valued at approximately £15 million, and this is going to span over a 6-year period, and over the next 2 fiscal years we will benefit from approximately £2,500,000. This investment will not merely support and addressing the symptoms, but also importantly it will address the underlying factors that perpetuate violence in our society. This program aims to enhance current governance arrangements such as a citizen security business group in violence prevention.
Juliet Cuthbert-Flynn, State Minister in the Ministry of National Security. The program will target 7 vulnerable communities and schools across the country. Its implementation will be led by the Ministry of National Security and the British High Commission. British High Commissioner Judith Slater reiterated the UK's commitment to Jamaica.
We know that schools are a really effective gateway to reaching key stakeholders, not just students, but teachers and parents and communities, to help address violence. And we're seeking to strengthen these foundational learnings, and we'll be able, therefore, not only to focus on literacy and numeracy, but also socio-emotional skills to enable youth to reap the full rewards from their time at school. We know there's a lot of work lying ahead. There will be more bumps in the road, which I'm sure we'll be able to surmount by working together. But I really wish to assure you of the UK's commitment to deepening its relations with Jamaica through this partnership.
That's Judith Slater, the UK High Commissioner to Jamaica. Haiti's newly appointed Presidential Council, Haiti's new Presidential Transitional Council is set to take office at an inauguration ceremony on Thursday. A surge of recent gang violence forced officials to move the ceremony from the National Palace to the outgoing Prime Minister's office. Ariel Henry said last month he would resign after armed groups blocked his return to the country from Kenya, where he had signed a deal to import a multinational security force in a bid to restore law and order. His departure left Haiti, home to more than 11 million people, without a prime minister from March 12. The gangs have capitalized on the power vacuum and have expanded their control of most of the capital, Port-au-Prince. The new transitional council is set to name an interim prime minister and has since scrambled to impose tight security measures ahead of the ceremony to swear in its 9 members. Further afield, Russia has vetoed a UN resolution sponsored by the United States and Japan, calling on all nations to prevent a dangerous nuclear arms race in outer space, calling it a dirty spectacle that cherry-picks weapons of mass destruction from all other weapons that should also be banned. The vote in the 15-member Security Council was 13 in favor, Russia opposed, and China abstaining. The resolution called on all countries not to develop or deploy nuclear arms or other weapons of mass destruction in space as banned under a 1967 international treaty that included the US and Russia, and to agree to the need to verify compliance.